television news anchor, keynote speaker, author, trainer, and communications consultant.
19 number one best-selling
have been nominated and won so many awards throughout your careers.
She has a wealth of experience interviewing and consulting with well-renowned figures, celebrities, and corporations. Nadia speaks on how to get people to like you, trust you, and want to do business with you.
Over the last few weeks, the entire world has been monitoring the treatment of your grandfather, Nelson Mandela. And my job was to introduce it and provide.
With topics like leveraging the power of your personal presence, networking for success, and lighting the fire. Nadia Bilchik.
What a pleasure to be with you on this 1st of April, new beginning. And one thing about today's conversation, it has nothing to do with April Fools because it is not a joke. And the gentleman that I am going to be talking to today are definitely no fools. In fact, they're from Glued Global Consulting, Dustin Harper and Corey Jacobs. And before I bring them onto the screen fully, I need to tell you that I met Dustin at Alon's Bakery at Phipps Plaza in Atlanta. And I glanced over at this very earnest young man looking at his screen. And there was a slide of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And it's a slide I use often. And that was my conversation starter. And as a result, here are Dustin Harper and Corey Jacobs. Dustin, first of all, before we begin, how did you feel that this woman who had just been walking Phipps in her athletic gear came to talk to you?
Yeah. Hey, good morning, Nadia. Funny enough, that was the first time I've actually been to Alon's Bakery at Phipps. I like that place a lot, but I kept kind of looking behind my shoulder. I felt like someone was watching me or looking at my screen a little bit. And then, maybe made some eye contact a couple times. And then eventually you came up, which I'm glad you did. And, I'm all about spontaneity. And I think like-minded people end up running into each other one way or the other. And then we had a great conversation and we talk about a lot of the same things. So I'm glad you came up to me. I kind of saw you from a distance looking, so maybe I should have came up to you, but I'm glad we connected. And growth mindset, habits, change, sounds like we're on the same page.
And you have partnered with Corey Jacobs. The company is Glued Global Consulting. So Corey, when people ask you, Corey, you have a company called Glued Global Consulting. What do you do? What do you say?
Yeah, first, our tagline is we help your workforce stick together, right? So it's a personal development and engagement company. So if someone asks me what we do, I say we focus on not the employees, they're humans first. So we focus on progress at home. Progress equals happiness. They'll show up at work better. And we do it in a variety of ways. And then if they ask a little more, we can get into it. But we have 5 pillars. We try to bridge the gap between personal development and professional development.
And Dustin, that gap between personal and professional development, unpack that for us.
Yeah, great question. So we have 5 pillars that we focus on. So first is getting 1% better and really focusing on habits. Second is mindset. So we call it the progressive mindset. So how do you have a growth versus fixed, have an abundance mentality, all those type of things. Then embracing change. We call it the comfort zone, kind of cliche, but how do you do hard things, embrace change, etc. Mindfulness. We think meditation, breath work. A lot of times before big presentations or maybe an interview like this, we'll do breath work to kind of get ready for it. So we have a lot of tips and tricks there. And then last is integrity. Just how can you live a life in integrity? And really, those are kind of 5 pieces of the puzzle. We think if you bring that together, you're going to be much better on the personal and professional side. Ultimately, what that does, it makes you happier as an employee, it makes you more productive and more profitable to the organization. So that's sort of where we focus on. And those 5 buckets is kind of our niches that we have been successful with.
Corey, it's so much harder to do all of this in a hybrid or virtual world. And I'm sure your clients, like mine, are either working several days from home or in fact haven't gone back to the office at all. How do you incorporate this into people that are having to navigate that?
Yeah. So I was a remote employee prior to the pandemic. I was virtual, then moved into a career where I'm physically in places, right? I'll give you an example. We're working with a company right now he decided to shut down all his offices. He's a national healthcare staffing firm, and he figured he could save money and help people stay at home. So we're working with him, and he has created a plan of health for his company. And they're used to being on camera and being remote a bit. It's challenging because people don't shut off the day, but we help push those points a little bit. And I believe the hybrid method of showing up a little bit in person breaks up the monotony of being at home all the time. So we try to get those one-time engagements together with our customers too. So that's what we're doing with this organization.
So Corey, why are you, again, both you and Dustin, I'd love to answer this question, is how did you get into doing this? And I'll start with you here, Dustin. Why are you so passionate about helping teams get glued?
Yeah, it's a great question. So going back a little bit, right out of college, I went into power tool sales. So Milwaukee Tool, if you ever go to Home Depot, you'll see red and black drills all over the place. I worked for them for almost a decade. It's a phenomenal company. I kind of climbed the corporate ladder. So I was all about climbing the ladder. I wanted to be VP, president. I ended up having 7 different roles during that time, and it was an awesome experience, a growth company. But I kind of hit a plateau. I hit a point where I was really stressed and burnt out, and I hit a plateau, and I wasn't getting to that next step that I wanted to. And it was kind of a turning point for me. So I was actually getting very constructive feedback at the time of things I could work on to get to that next step. But I took it sort of personal, just to be quite frank. I was told, hey, you need to have more tough conversations with customers, et cetera. And I kind of took it personally, like someone was out to get me. Looking back on it, I look back on it fondly because that kind of flipped the switch for me to really invest in myself and be a lot more open to feedback. But anyways, I decided to make a major change at that point. I went into healthcare. Go figure, power tools to healthcare makes a ton of sense. But my mom is in healthcare. She's an administrator at a hospital. My dad's a doctor. So I went into medical device sales, a company called Stryker. And that was right before the pandemic. And then when I did that, that's when I really started embracing change, being open to taking risks. And I started hiring coaches, all these different things to help me throughout that. And that's really where I think I started my well-being journey, investing in myself journey. And it really just took off from there. And the pandemic happened when I started doing medical device sales. So that was basically getting hit with a brick wall, one of the most challenging environments of all time, debatably, as far as what was going on in the hospitals. And I had a choice. I could go back with my tail between my leg where I came from, or try to figure it out and get better. And I decided to do the latter and try to get better. And from there, just really took off more. And that kind of brings into the last year. I've known Corey for almost a decade. So we've been good friends from college. We've always hung out together and talked about business stuff, real estate, side hustles, all these different things. And he had started Glued a couple of years ago. I'll let him share that story. But we started just working more and more together. And on the side, I started working with Glued as an advisor, helping with sales, business development. And then that kept taking more and more. And then eventually we had so much momentum and the feeling just felt right that I decided to go all in with Corey a little less than a year ago. So it's been a journey, but I think that's something too that makes us unique is we have experience in a lot of different industries, and we've seen what we talk about help either ourselves personally or other teams in all these different industries. So we're really passionate about it when we talk to folks, and hopefully that comes across. And yeah, grateful to be with Corey, and I'll let him share some of his story too.
Yes. And Corey, when you do, I want you to add something here. And that is what was fascinating for me about meeting Dustin was there are millennials. I know lots and lots of people in the world of professional development who, like me, I'm an X. I'm actually exactly on the cusp of Boomer X. And both Dustin and Corey, you're really the age of my children. In fact, maybe even a bit younger. So what I was interested in, Corey, if you can add this in, is there a gap? And are we, as the Boomer X's, understanding millennials in the workplace? And what advice and guidance can you give to anyone who's watching today, who's managing a diverse team in terms of age groups?
Yeah, what a wonderful topic and great question. First of all, being a millennial, well, I'll explain what interests me for this industry of personal development and motivation and betterment. I wore a lot of masks when I was younger. I felt I had no value, and I just put a mask on and came to work. Had a terrible brand. I was the bare minimum employee. I was just doing it because I thought I was supposed to do it. And I looked up to the quiet sufferers of the world, right? The people, the suffering artists. And I was like, that's me. And no one understands me. And let alone everyone has issues. We're humans and it's okay to have problems and not be perfect. So I switched it up. I decided to spend my time with mentors and coaches and folks that had the margin of growth from whatever suffering point they were at to level up to where they were. And once you get to that point, you want to show people. And that's where we sit. So as far as millennials go, I think that's a differentiator between us. There is not quite a bit of organizations that are doing it from a millennial standpoint. We don't variate, but I have a good friend. His name's Chris Tuff. He wrote the book, The Millennial Whisperer. It's a wonderful tool that organizations can use to gap your generation to the next generations. And it's an excellent tool, and it's a wonderful book to read.
The Millennial Whisperer, and that is Chris Tuff.
Correct.
Chris, because that's why we're here. We want to learn from you, the Millennial Whisperer, Chris Tuff. Thank you. I will put that up. But as millennials, you both being millennials, is it true? Like, we get so much information about millennials just want to be recognized and rewarded, and they want work-life balance, and they want to work for organizations that have purpose. What are the myths and what are the truths? I mean, would you consider yourself a typical millennial, Dustin?
I'll take some of this. I'll take a stab at it. Something I heard recently was a lot of times I think millennials get, people throw them under the bus a little bit for changing jobs too much, which is something that comes up a lot. And I get it. It's different from generation to generation. Like, my parents were used to maybe working at the same place for 10 plus years. And that's amazing too. It's hard to find that these days. I think it's incredible when you come across that. But I think sometimes millennials get a little bit of shade about moving companies. But when you look at it, because a lot of what we talk about is doing hard things, change, getting uncomfortable. If you're willing to take that risk, go to a new company, change it up, maybe you're frustrated where you're at. I think this generation and millennials, and probably the one after us, they're more open to change and doing some of those things and taking risks. And if they're not happy in a role, I think quite frankly, they have more drive to kind of just make that change. And I know that's happened to me. The more I progressed, I climbed the ladder for a while, but then I realized that, hey, I just want to be happy. Even if I don't make as much, I want to be doing what I'm passionate about, and I'm willing to take a risk to do that. And I've fell on my face before, that's for sure, but it's also worked out many times too. So I think one thing with millennials that popped in my head is that they're more open to change, and that could look the wrong way, I guess, if they're hopping around companies. And of course, sometimes you can hop around too much with companies, but that's one thing that stands out to me as we're kind of talking about it.
So in terms of the next generation that's coming into the workplace, and let's not forget how people have been impacted by COVID and how isolation impacted teams. And although there's a semblance of going back to so-called normal, are you seeing that, Corey, at all, how people have been impacted? Because certainly in my sessions, I see the impact that isolation has had. And just to tell you both, I still freelance at CNN, and a couple of weeks ago, my computer literally just broke down. So I had to go in. It was one of the first times that I'd gone into the building since 2019.
Wow.
And I went into the building. Yes, I had not been, because in 2019, I took a buyout with CNN and came back as a contractor freelancer. And I cannot tell you the energy of being back in that newsroom, of hearing the team connect, have conversations, talk about the news, banter. I did a quick pre-interview with someone. I could go directly to the person who was writing the segment and tell her straight away what he'd said without even having to write it down. There was just something. And although I love working from home, I am so excited to be doing this interview with you in my sweatpants and no shoes, right? How do we, as people in the world of professional development, because part of getting glued is real connection. So just any advice, here we are, we're connecting. I've met Dustin in person. Corey, I hope to meet you in person. But
Absolutely.
What advice and guidance are you giving your teams about real connectivity, which is the cornerstone of building trust?
Yeah, well, just piggybacking on your point of your experience going back into the office, like this company I just mentioned that we're working with, we're advising him that there's something about getting back together, right? Let's do these one-time in-person meetings quarterly, 2 annual meetings. We're helping him figure it out. So to your point, it's an absolute refresher.
There's some structure is what you're saying. I think that's so important.
Yeah. And it's connectivity. We know there's so many studies out there. Let's take addiction, for example. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. When you're connected, I mean, the connection is everything, right? So one of our pillars is the comfort zone. So we do a lot of workshopping around putting adventure in your day, dangling a carrot in front of your day, your week, your month, your year. Make it bigger as the measurement goes on, right? You can't have a massive trip planned every day, but you can for 1 year. And it's something that people are in a hamster wheel of working right now around the clock, and they forget to dial in a little bit of personal time and something that has nothing to do with work. And so that's a big, big focus for us, actually.
Is making sure that people understand that it's not only important to be at work, but what else can you do? Now, another thing, I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about, and I know people can reach out to you on globalconsulting.com. But something you mentioned when we were chatting was feedback and coaching. And that is something that I am passionate about. I believe so strongly that feedback is a gift. I think there are two things. We don't know how to give feedback, but we emphasize that. But there's another most important thing is we don't know how to receive feedback. So advice and guidance from you on giving and receiving feedback and coaching and why that's so essential in keeping your team motivated and productive.
Yeah, I can take that first part, but yeah, so the story going back to me. So when I was climbing that ladder, I was trying to get to director, VP, and quite frankly, some of my counterparts were getting promoted before me, and I was a little irritated by it at the time. And I was getting very straightforward feedback from the senior leadership of ways that I could improve. One of them was having the tough conversations with customers, and then internally, I would avoid them until the last minute, basically. A lot of people don't want to have those conversations, so I would still do them, but I would wait till the last minute, which would cause more problems on whatever the issue was. So, but I didn't take it the right way, and I kind of took it more personal. So I think you have to get over taking it personal, and that if you want to get better, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If you've been the top sales rep for 5 years in a row, if you're CEO of a hospital, whatever it is, you can always get better and learn. And I think that's just this mindset of taking that feedback. So don't take it personal. And then once you do it, I found, and I know Corey can speak to it too, once I started paying for coaches outside of work with my own money, it kind of unlocked this inner self of me that I just wanted to keep having coaching. So I mean, from now we have a coach for our business at Glued. I've had a coach for personal branding and LinkedIn. I've had a sales coach. I mean, I've had pretty much all these different types of coaches. So once you do it, then you feel much better about it. And we just think no matter what you're in, sales, if you're an executive, news anchor, that you have to be continuously investing in yourself, and you can always learn more. But I wasn't like that at the beginning of my career. It was definitely a process to get there. That's for sure.
Oh, I think you say that so well. We just have to take a pause here because my dear friend and mentor colleague, Terry Earthwind Nichols, who's mentor to the world's leaders and one of the greatest. What can I say about you, Terry? I think I consider him part of my personal mastermind group of advisors, tribal council, whatever you'd like to say. And he's commented, first of all, he said, very interesting pillars. The fact that you are listening today means a lot to us. If I could find a way of getting him the link quickly, I would ask him to join us, but that'll have to be the next one. But he does ask a question. He says, Dustin, while we're talking to you, you have to tell us about the artwork behind you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you for commenting on that. It's kind of my go-to. Anytime I do podcasts or LinkedIn Lives, this is my background. It's the hipster president. So I think you can only see two of them right now. You have JFK, Ronald Reagan, and Abraham Lincoln, and they're all kind of just in this hipster type vibe. So it's kind of, when I first moved into this condo, I kept getting Instagram ads for this cool looking artwork. So I quite frankly randomly picked these three, but it's been kind of a little trademark for me when I do podcasts. And it's got both sides too. You got Republican, Democrat, so people can't get mad at me about that.
Who's the artist? Because I think we had him on CNN last week. The artist is, if you've got it.
I do not know off the top of my head, so I will have to DM you that or text you.
Because he's so awesome, and it's somewhere in my notes somewhere. I'll find it, but I think it's Pam. Somebody has to look it up. Who does the artwork of what they call the presidential portraits with the cool hair? If somebody can set that up for us while they're doing this, Paige, because we have Paige Medina with us, and we have Cheryl Westerman with us, who is the remarkable nutritionist in Atlanta, and Paige Medina, who is in the legal department, and who is also a great friend. Paige, if you can look up, please, the person who does presidential portraits. I literally spoke to him last week. Anyway, so moving on from your presidential portraits, because part of course, our ability to connect is our ability to go, oh, I noticed that behind you, and have a conversation around it, because you go from just being a square on a virtual platform to real interaction, which is so critical. So we were getting back, Corey. So one thing, and I love this, 5 words that have changed my life. And I'll share those with you because they have been so transformational. When anybody gives me feedback, and believe me, it is hard to get feedback, whatever level you're at, I say, thank you, tell me more. Even if it's my children and I don't agree with what they're saying, I go like this, thank you. I really might not want to say thank you. I might want to say another you, but I go, be more specific. Can you tell me more? And that really helps, because even as you said, I think Corey, Dustin, you said it so brilliantly, even if there's a 0.1% chance that it can make you better. And we all want to grow. So if we can embrace it, but we need to teach people that, because it's not instinctive to receive feedback. And Terry Earthwind Nichols, HE Ambassador Terry Earthwind Nichols, mentor to the world's leaders, says great connection. Barry Leith says, I'm loving this topic, and I would love to offer my expertise on overcoming communication apprehension. Yes, Barry, I have to find a way, and I don't know how to do it here, where I could invite you into this link to comment, but we'll have to take it offline. So Sharon Sprung did the presidential portraits, but I think Cam Harless. Look up Paige, Cam Harless. He also does presidential portraits. Look him up. You see Paige. She's a great wing woman. Isn't it great? I have people watching today, and I know my friends are going, wow, you're having such a fabulous conversation on by the way, it's a very rainy, stormy Saturday morning in Atlanta.
Yep, it is.
And I'm sure Dustin and Corey went, I'm so pleased we don't have to actually drive into a studio. So stories of breakthroughs, like if we look at your careers, and you've had multifaceted careers coming to the point of coaching, teaching, is there an example? And I'll give you a moment to think about this. Yes, it's Cam Harless. That's his name. He also does presidential portraits with fabulous hair styles. Is there a moment where somebody's come up to you and says, you know, thank you, or a team has said, Corey, thank you, or Dustin, because you did X, we've achieved Y?
Dustin, do you want to give that example of the company out of Orlando?
Yeah. I was going to say, Corey, you probably got some good stories here too, but so from a customer standpoint,
that is such great camaraderie, right? What you just did. I just have to point it out before you tell us the story. Something leaders don't do enough is they feel they've got to answer all the questions instead of handing it over to someone. So really, I just have to take that moment and say, well done. It was not scripted. Thank you, Dustin.
Well, I'll actually talk to that for a second. I think Dustin.
Now he stole it back. So
yeah, well,
yes.
I'm going to let you finish, but I gotta harp on Dustin. No coincidence, that's his last name, but I got to harp on Dustin. We are truly a yin and yang. It's an incredible partnership. I admire Dustin tremendously. So he's a great speaker. So go ahead.
And that's awesome saying that about your colleague, because so often in meetings, someone will ask the leader something, or the facilitator, and they'll answer, whereas someone in the team could have answered and done as good a job, and that would have demonstrated leadership. I am just going to look up Cam Harless for you while you answer that question.
Yeah, well, one thing too, right back at Corey, because so he pushed me to kind of make this leap, and there was times where I didn't feel comfortable doing it, you know, completely going on the entrepreneurial side. So he pushed me in a big way, and I'm glad I did it. So wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So I appreciate that, Corey. And in fact, going deeper on the story here, at some point in the last couple of years, there's a point where I got laid off. I had a lot of bad stuff going on as far as like some surgeries. First person I called essentially to let them know I was going to go full time was Corey. So it's kind of we have a lot of stories we could go on that, but let's focus on the customers too. So Yeah, I think the example you were talking about is, I mean, we're passionate about these topics, and we know that potentially your everyday employee isn't as aware and open to these type of things, or have heard of them before, or have had the access before. So we really kind of look at it that way. If we can even make an impact on a few people within this organization, it can make a big deal, because our price points are relatively low, and the cost of turnover is so high right now. I mean, it's 1.5 to 2.5 times a person if they leave. So we kind of look at it as like, hey, if we can prevent a couple people from leaving, if we can help you do XYZ, it's going to be more than pay off. And that's when we're talking to leaders, what we talk about. But there's one story, an example, where basically the leader was just saying how there was one employee in particular on her team, this was a hospital, that basically we kind of lit a fire into this person. This person wanted to become a life coach, but never thought that they were going to be able to do that. But then after listening to some of our sessions and our programs, she decided to go kind of pursue that. And that word, just lighting a fire in the employee, I think made all the difference. And we also think a lot of times, if we can prevent people from leaving, maybe they're having a tough time and we can have that impact. That's another one too. And then from a sales side, we really help. We work with a lot of sales teams. So there's a ton of examples of closing more deals. So a lot of times, at the end of the day, sales is all about closing deals and making it happen. So even doing something as simple as a morning routine has helped some of our customers and their employees kind of turn things around and close more deals. So we have a ton of different examples there. Sometimes it can be hard to have a hard ROI number behind it, but I think, people not leaving, closing deals, or making an impact personally with that example of like becoming a life coach on the side. I thought that was pretty cool too.
And time saved in their day.
So it's the beginning of April. It's a new month. My wish for every single person who is watching us now live, or who is watching us recorded, or who is in any of our sessions, be they workshops or keynotes, what do you hope that what is a good message to say this April, try to do what?
Yeah, I can take that. I think April, May, June, every beginning of the month, set an intention. What's your intention? And we have a chief marketing officer that works for us, and he sent us a post yesterday. He talks about writing your rockets. What's your rocket for the week or for the month? The one thing that will set everything else apart. So every month, set an intention, set something that you're focused on. If you don't get anything else done, at least you got that one thing done. And that's what we hope for April we get done. And for every month ahead. But as far as this session, we hope that we encourage leadership to look at employees as humans, which I know they do, but we come down to KPIs and metrics. But if you focus on the human element and create a culture, it's a little easier to attain those pressurized situations.
And I'm going to come back to you and ask you what your intention for the month is, Corey. And you, Dustin, your message, as we leave people today, you've been so wonderful in communicating what you do, how you help teams stay connected. I hear from you, there's a big part about mental health. And for you, Dustin, your intention or your wish for everybody as we start April.
Yeah, I think it's taking a look at what are you doing first thing in the morning and not trying to do too much. I find myself where I try to do too much during the week or the day or the month. So just what are some small things you can do to really make a difference? And let's talk about morning routines. We didn't go deep into it, but Corey and I are huge fans of morning routines, and that's been a huge game changer for us. And I think a lot of times people think that you have to do some crazy hour, 75-minute morning routine, but it doesn't have to be that. So what is like one or two things that you could do in the morning every day that's time for you, that's going to make you feel better? It could be sitting in silence. It could be praying. It could be reading a book, 5 pages, but make it simple and small, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 things you're grateful for, whatever it is, and try to add that this month. But just pick one thing, maybe 2 things max, and do that. And then it's crazy how much, once you start doing those healthy things, those good habits, you compound them into more healthy things and more positive things. But don't do too much too fast. Just pick one thing you can do in the morning for you. And that would be my message. Hopefully someone does that. Thank you.
And Corey, your intention for the month?
One word: prioritization. I'll clearly state it's not my strongest suit, even though some people would argue it is. Prioritization, saying no to more things so I can say yes to the things that really move the needle in my life and in my business and in my world.
Who is the more organized? Interesting partnership the two of you have. You said yin and yang. So is one of you the ideas person and one of you more detail orientated?
Definitely.
Yeah, so I would say Corey's a little bit stronger on the personal development side, even though he's amazing on the professional. I'm probably maybe a little bit stronger on the professional development side, not as much on the personal development. So we kind of bring that together and it's like the perfect match. But I would say for sure, Corey, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the ideas, the creation, the strategy, like the mastermind behind everything, that's Corey. He's also really good at sales, business development, all these other things. But what are his like top strengths? I would say it's the ideas, the creation, the long-term strategy. I mean, he built the foundation of Glued. I'm more execution, sales, business development, making it happen, implementing, closing the deal, and bringing it home. So we try to work together. And I think that's something we struggle with at times is like we're both doing similar things because we're both good at similar things. But how do we maximize our strengths? And then my weaknesses, I'll let Corey do or vice versa. So,
and Nadia, one thing that Dustin and I do, we do have coaches and mentors around us. We see people that are successful and they teach it to us. We are clearly, we're really good about communicating to each other and being brutally, radically honest and going, we're doing the same stuff. We can't be doing this. And this allows us to create more strategy for the leadership we work with. So not only are we a used case study, it actually works. So personal development, professional development, and we have real examples, real life ROI that we're able to provide to leadership. So it's great.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. Dustin, I am so happy I came to chat to you. And I always say networking starts with a connection, then a conversation. And what today was, which was a collaboration. And I got to meet Corey Jacobs. Their company is called Glued Global Consulting. That is gluedglobalconsulting.com. So if you want to reach out to them. Gentlemen, thank you so very, very much. What a fabulous conversation around what does it take to be connected? And I say particularly in a hybrid environment. And the takeaway today is there are a finite amount of universal truths. We know we need to keep communicating. We know we need to take care of our people. And taking care of our people means recognizing them and helping them navigate. I'm Nadia Vilcek. My website is nadiaspeaks.com. My guests today, Corey Jacobs and Dustin Harper. And please stay in touch. Thank you to all the wonderful people who commented. And let's hope that April is a fabulous month.